Welcome to U.S. News Source Channel. Operations accelerated on the Luhansk front. HIMARS operations launched on critical fronts. Ukrainian armed forces targeted Russian military logistics points. A large-scale attack has been launched on an important area. Great progress has begun to be made in the Kremina line, which is of strategic importance. Around 120 Russian mercenaries were neutralized even on the Luhansk front alone. 10 Russian attack aircraft were shot down on the Zaporizhia and Dnipropetrovsk fronts. Even on a single front, 50 Russian soldiers were neutralized in a short time. Ukrainian rocket and artillery units hit 4 Russian command points. Operations began to leave the Russian soldiers helpless. Simultaneous operations on the fronts are in favor of the Ukrainian army. Strategic moves cause the Russian army to suffer losses. Especially recently, mutual attacks on the eastern and southern fronts have been increasing day by day. It is known that Donbass in the east is of critical importance for both countries. In this region, which has both military and political importance, the moves must be carried out more carefully. In recent days, record attacks have been carried out in Donetsk on this front. As a result of these operations carried out one after another, the Russian army suffered heavy losses. While the Ukrainian armed forces continued their operations on this front, they began to increase the intensity of their operations on the Luhansk front. According to the breaking news, HIMARS operations were carried out in the Alchevsk region on the Luhansk front. This area has been attacked on a large scale. According to the statements, 12 attacks were carried out with HIMARS missile systems in the region. It was reported that these large-scale attacks were carried out with a large operation at night. After the attacks, it was announced that many explosions were heard in the region and the Russian military points were seriously damaged. It was also stated that flames rose from powerful explosions as a result of numerous missile attacks. It was reported that many Russian soldiers and equipment were neutralized. This area has been attacked before. Due to the importance of this region, it may cause an increase in attacks. As a reminder, this Alchevsk region is an important railway junction. This allows the Russian army to carry out military shipments to the fronts. This region, which is located in the middle of 2 fronts, may cause an increase in conflicts on behalf of both countries due to its logistical importance. Because if the dominance of this region is completely in Ukraine, it will be more difficult for Russia to provide supply flow to these important eastern fronts via the railway, which is frequently used by Russia. For this, all kinds of moves are of greater importance. For this, it is estimated that the Ukrainian army can increase its large-scale attacks on the region. At the same time, the Kremina line, another critical area on this Luhansk front, is witnessing violent clashes. According to breaking news, this Kremina has been reported that the Ukrainian army has advanced at least 2.5 kilometers in a week. Deputy head of the Main Operations Directorate of the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Brigadier General Alexei Grimov said, "Our soldiers continue their offensive actions near the city of Kremina." During the week, the Ukrainian defenders advanced about 2.5 kilometers towards the settlement in question. In addition, according to the stated, defense lines are being prepared on the front. General Staff, on the other hand, stated that in the event that the Ukrainian armed forces crossed the defense lines located near the Svatov and Kremina regions, and accordingly, Russian troops were moved to Luhansk, a significant part of the Russian troops planned to surrender. In particular, the surrender of mobilized untrained troops is expected to increase. Because in recent days, it is seen that the number of escaping incidents in the Russian army has increased. Some of the fleeing soldiers are caught, and some are trying to surrender in order not to suffer losses. Moreover, it is known that Russian mercenaries and Chechen soldiers came to support the Russian army on this front. But these soldiers are getting more and more difficult against the Ukrainian army and they suffer serious losses. More than 100 Russian mercenaries were reportedly neutralized on the Luhansk front alone. According to the statements of the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, 120 Wagner Group Russian mercenaries were neutralized in this region. Remaining soldiers, on the other hand, both experience a decrease in their operational power and deal with a decrease in motivation due to daily casualties on the fronts. Operations at the front began to become much more challenging for Russia. For these reasons, the Russian army can inflict much greater losses as a result of mutual attacks on the fronts. If this situation continues, it will be much more difficult to compensate. At the same time, operations continue on critical fronts on the southeast front. Intense clashes are taking place in the Zaporizhia region, which connects the southern and eastern fronts and is of critical importance due to its location. In the past days, it was reported that about 200 Russian soldiers fled from this region and began to be searched. This situation shows that the Russian army is having a very difficult time on these fronts and they are afraid of incurring losses. It was even reported that operations against the Russian army were carried out in the Berdyansk region. As a result of this operation, it was announced that 50 Russian soldiers were neutralized. Operations on this critical front in the southeast are getting more and more difficult for Russian soldiers, and this is even affecting the course of the war. For this reason, it is much more important to carry out the operations in a strategic direction. Moreover, according to the breaking news, the Ukrainian Defense Forces shot down 10 Russian attack planes on this front and in Dnipropetrovsk during the day. Aircraft and anti-aircraft missile units of the Eastern Air Force Command carried out a joint operation with the Ukrainian Army Air Defense Forces, destroying 9 Shahid-type unmanned aerial vehicles and 1 Marlin aircraft in the skies of Dnipropetrovsk and Zaporizhia in just one night. Day by day, many attack efforts of the Russian forces are completely in vain. This brings Russia's war losses to an even more irrecoverable dimension. It is also known that this Dnipropetrovsk front has strategic importance. Russian army has continued to attack this front since the beginning of the war. Especially in the river on the front, an advantage is provided in order to ensure interregional logistics flow. This is done via bridges over the river. In order not to use this advantage to the Russian army, the Ukrainian army removes the Russian soldiers from the bridge crossings on the river and makes the bridges used by the Russian army out of use one by one. For this reason, developments in these regions continue with each passing day. Ukrainian army continues its successful operations on many fronts. This time, the Ukrainian Air Force carried out more than 10 attacks on Russian military personnel and equipment clusters, and an attack on anti-aircraft missile systems during the day. After these attacks, explosions were heard from many Russian military points and it was stated that flames rose from the seriously damaged equipment. Ukrainian rocket and artillery units neutralized several Russian soldiers and hit 4 command points. These units, which have been making accurate moves with hundreds of shooting missions since the beginning of the war, continue to reduce Russian military resources day by day. Moreover, with the shooting of these command points, it may be desired to neutralize many Russian military commanders and to interrupt the communication between the soldiers at the front. It is not possible to make a successful progress on the fronts due to the decreasing experienced Russian soldiers. For this reason, all kinds of moves on such fronts are of critical importance regarding the war. In the long run, all kinds of moves on behalf of the countries should be carried out in a more strategic direction. Otherwise, the mistake of one side can make the other side have a significant advantage. For this, every move is of greater importance than the previous one. In the future, we will see more clearly in which direction the countries will move. We'll see what happens in the next few days. We have reached the end of another video. You can support us by liking the video. You can easily follow new videos by subscribing. I wish you all a war-free day. See you.